Evenings, that sacred space between obligation and sleep, that quiet borderland between who you were during the day and who you could become tomorrow. Most people treat it like an afterthought, a throwaway window of time meant for collapse, not intention. You tell yourself you're decompressing, but what you're really doing is disappearing. You scroll through fragments, open apps you don't care about, watch shows you're not really watching, and somewhere along the way, you forget that this space, this gap between days, was supposed to be a threshold, not a trap. See, the evening is not where your day ends, it's where your next one begins. But the world trained you to treat it like sedation, to mistake noise for release, to confuse stimulation with rest, to believe that numbness is recovery, when really, it's just emotional avoidance dressed as self-care. You think you're tired because you worked hard, but the truth is, you're tired because you never actually stopped. Your mind never shut down, it kept absorbing sound, color, emotion, fragments, until it became saturated with clutter you never meant to carry. And then you expect clarity. You expect presence. You expect focus from a mind that was never given space to exhale. Let me tell you something. You don't get a sharp mind from a morning meditation. You get it from an intentional night. Because clarity isn't a sunrise miracle, it's a cumulative reward for how gently, how intentionally, how courageously you allow your system to descend into rest. This is not about quitting habits or joining some aesthetic routine. This is about rhythm, about remembering that your nervous system isn't just a machine that runs on caffeine and checklists. It's a living ecosystem. And every time you flood it with chaos before bed, you compromise its ability to regenerate. You wake up groggy not because you didn't sleep, but because your brain never finished yesterday. So tonight, not tomorrow, tonight is the moment you decide who gets to show up in your life. I'm the time distorter, and tonight we reclaim the space that's been quietly stealing your future. Why most evenings break your brain? You end your day thinking you're winding down. You dim the lights, sink into the couch, open your favorite app, press play, let it all wash over you. It feels like rest, but it isn't, because your mind doesn't register passivity as restoration. It registers input, and input is still work. The problem is not that you're engaging, it's that you're engaging with everything. You scroll through a dozen lives on social media. You jump from reel to text to notification to headline. You're surrounded by noise and convinced it's silence. This is what modern rest looks like. A nervous system in low-grade alert mode. Your eyes are still darting, your brain is still processing. Your emotional system is still reacting. And when it's finally time to sleep, you wonder why your thoughts won't settle. Why you feel heavier, not lighter. Why your dreams feel like reruns of everything you tried to avoid. There's a name for this: cognitive residue. It's the psychological hangover left by unfinished stimuli. Your brain doesn't just shut off. It processes, integrates, replays. And if you flood it with stimulation, it just keeps looping. That's why you wake up foggy, not because you slept wrong, but because your evening never ended. You never crossed the threshold between engagement and renewal. You just collapsed. And there's a difference. Collapse is what happens when your mind gives out before your body does. Rest is what happens when you choose to pause. When you close the door on the noise, not just physically, but mentally. You think you're relaxing, but your brain knows better. You're not rebooting, you're buffering. And every night you repeat this pattern. Your focus pays the price, quietly, but brutally, the next day. This isn't just about sleep hygiene. It's about identity hygiene. Because who you become tomorrow is shaped by how you end today. Let's leave opinions behind for a moment and talk about what actually happens inside your brain each night. Every time you scroll a feed, respond to messages, binge content, or jump from one screen to another. Your brain activates the mesolimbic dopamine pathway. This is your reward circuit. It lights up in response to novelty, stimulation, and the promise of quick gratification. But these dopamine hits, they're short-lived, surface level, unsatisfying. What you're training your brain to crave isn't rest or clarity. It's fragmentation, tiny bursts of stimulation that feel good for seconds but leave you mentally scattered. Now here's the problem. As the day progresses, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for discipline, logic, and long-term planning, begins to shut down. That's natural. It's a biological rhythm. But pair that with high stimulation, and you've got a system that's wide open to chaos and impulse with no strong governor to hold it in check. That you think you're winding down. But neurologically, you're doing the opposite. You're winding up. So by the time you try to fall asleep, your brain isn't relaxing. It's overstimulated, still digesting input, still anticipating the next hit of novelty. And here's the catch. Sleep doesn't delete stimulation. It delays its processing. So you wake up not with a clean slate, but with a cluttered cognitive field, already full before the day even begins. You call it brain fog, lack of motivation, maybe even burnout. But what it is, at its core, is residue, unfinished loops. A brain that was fed junk and now can't find its center. This is not just theory. Studies have shown that chronic evening overstimulation reduces working memory, impairs emotional regulation, and fragments attention across the following day. So no, you don't have a morning problem. You have a night design that's sabotaging your focus at its roots. You think rest is about sleep length. It's not. It's about input quality. And right now, you're not preparing your mind for clarity. You're setting it up to chase ghosts from the night before. You sit down at the end of the day. You exhale. You reach for the remote or your phone. You tell yourself, I earned this. And maybe you did. But let's ask the harder question. Is what you're calling rest actually restoring you? Because most people don't rest. They escape. You've been taught to believe that numbing is the same thing as unwinding. But there's a massive difference between relief and repair. Scrolling endlessly, binge watching a series you're not even absorbing, snacking mindlessly, it's not recharging your mind. It's distracting it. Here's what's really going on. Your brain is trying to recover from the cognitive stress of the day. But instead of space, you give it stimulation. Instead of silence, you give it stories. And instead of reconnecting with yourself, you dissociate. So you wake up and the weight hasn't lifted. It's been pushed into the background, waiting to resurface when your willpower is low again. This cycle creates an emotional debt. You pay for it in irritability, indecision, and that dull sense of meaninglessness that no productivity hack can fix. True rest is active, not passive. It doesn't just feel good. It makes you stronger, clearer, more connected. It looks like solitude without input. Like journaling the things you didn't say today. Like sitting with discomfort long enough to learn from it. Yes, it's harder than grabbing your phone. But the cost of not doing it is living a life where your evenings put you to sleep. Not just physically, but emotionally. You think you're giving yourself a break, but you might be breaking your capacity for real recovery. And no, this doesn't mean never watching TV again or deleting every app. It means being honest. Is this moment healing me or hiding me? Because the difference between sedation and restoration is everything. How I rebuilt my evenings, the pattern break. It started the night I caught myself scrolling with no memory of how I got there. The room was quiet. My body was still, but my mind spinning, fragmented, numb. That's when I realized that this wasn't rest. It was residue. and I was drowning in it. Night after night. So I didn't add anything new. I subtracted. No more late night YouTube loops. No more half-watching shows while texting people I didn't care to talk to. No more background noise masking foreground emptiness. I gave myself a single rule. No consumption after 9 p.m. At first, it was brutal. Silence felt like withdrawal. My brain craved the buzz of content like sugar. But around day 10, something shifted. I started noticing my thoughts again. Not the ones reacting to headlines or posts, but the quiet ones. The ones that whisper truth, not distraction. I started sleeping deeper, not because I changed my mattress, but because I wasn't feeding chaos to my nervous system right before bed. I found myself reaching for a pen instead of a remote, sitting in stillness longer than was comfortable, feeling again. This wasn't a productivity hack, it was a homecoming. Because evenings stopped being a dumping ground for what I couldn't face during the day. They became a doorway into clarity, into honesty, into actual rest. And that doorway, it's open to you. Not by adding 10 new habits, by removing the one thing standing between your mind and its own signal, the noise. Most people wait until they're exhausted to end their day, but endings matter. They send a message to your brain about whether the day closed with alignment or avoidance. That's why I built a simple 4-part framework to reclaim my nights. No fluff, no rigid routines, just signals to my nervous system that it's safe to reset. Part 1, Transition Ritual. 10 minutes. That's all. No tech, no input, just a symbolic gesture that the workday is done. Maybe it's a slow walk in silence. Maybe it's brewing tea. Maybe it's one sentence in a journal. It doesn't matter what it is. It matters that your body feels the shift. Part 2, Emotional check-in. Ask yourself, what am I carrying that today didn't resolve? You'd be surprised how much weight we drag into sleep. Unspoken frustrations, lingering disappointments, quiet grief. You don't need to fix them, just name them. Let your mind exhale what it wasn't allowed to process. Part 3, Stimulation. Cut off. No screen-based content for at least 60 minutes before sleep. That means no Netflix, no social scrolls, no background noise disguised as rest. You're not punishing yourself. You're making space for your system to regulate without needing a screen to do it for you. Part 4, Mind alignment. Before bed, take 1 minute to ask, what's the purpose of tomorrow? Not the to-do list, not the meetings, the purpose. Why will you wake up? What matters? Even a vague answer shifts your brain from autopilot into orientation. This is not about being perfect. I don't hit all for every night, but even when I get to write, my sleep deepens, my mornings sharpen, and my sense of self strengthens. Because you don't fix your mind by cramming it with more. You fix it by giving it space to return to itself. Your night is not the end of your day, that it's the beginning of who you'll be tomorrow. The real question, who are you becoming after 9 p.m.? There's a version of you that shows up when the world goes quiet. No deadlines, no expectations, no eyes watching, just you and your defaults. That version, it's not random. It's a rehearsal. Every night, your brain rehearses what it will repeat tomorrow. And most people rehearse disconnection. They become the version who scrolls for hours, who snacks out of boredom, who chases noise to avoid silence. And then they wonder why their mornings feel heavy, why focus feels distant, why life feels blurry. But the truth is this. Your nights are not passive, they're programming. So the question isn't how do I get better focus? The question is, who do I become when no one's watching? Are you rehearsing distraction or devotion? Are your nights a place of drift or direction? This is not about guilt. It's about awareness. Because after 9 p.m., your discipline fades. But your patterns speak louder. If your evening self is chaotic, your life will be too. But if your evening self is intentional, even quietly so, your entire identity begins to shift. Who you are when you're tired is often who you really are. And that's the version writing your story. So check in. Who are you becoming after dark? Because that version isn't just ending your day, it's deciding your future. You've been trying to fix your focus with hacks, apps, routines. But the truth, focus doesn't start at sunrise. It starts the moment your work ends. Your mind isn't a switch, it's a stream. And your evenings are the direction of the current. If your nights are filled with noise, your days will be filled with static. This isn't about perfection. It's about presence. You don't have to delete every app. You don't have to quit every show. But you do have to ask, is this building the clarity I crave or dissolving it? Because clarity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from subtracting what dulls you. Tonight is not just another evening. It's a rehearsal for tomorrow's mind and the future you say you want. It starts with how you end your day. So if this made something in you shift, stir, even ache a little, subscribe. Not for more noise, but to stay connected to the version of you who knows. I'm not here to escape my life. I'm here to align with it. I'm the time distorter, and I'll be here every time you choose clarity over chaos.